In this video, we're going to be talking about reversal theory. Now, this is a very complex theory. It was originally a theory of psychology, but it has been utilized as a communication theory in many different fields, such as coaching, teaching for leadership skills, and self-help. What I'm going to do for you today is try to break it down as simply as possible, as it is very dense, and try to make sense of it, and then talk a little bit about why it is important for communication and how you can utilize it in your own life. So what is reversal theory? It was introduced by Dr. Michael Apter, a British psychologist in the mid-1970s, and it's basically a theory of motivation. The goal is to understand why people do what they do. And what has been found is some very interesting research that is very widely studied. There are thousands of publications, it has its own psychology journal, and there have been about 30 books published on the topic. So I'm going to get right into it now, first talking about domains. You can see there are 4 domains in the boxes that are presented here. I'm going to talk about these domains and what domains are, and then break them down into the states on either side of the domains, and then the values that are generally felt when we are feeling either state in any given moment. So what are the domains? The domains are basically different ideas that we have in our mind that we are working towards when we feel motivated towards something. Let me be more specific. The first domain we have is means and ends. When you are feeling on either side of this domain, basically what you have in mind is a means or an ends. This is the sole reason why you're doing something. For instance, on either side we have the playful state or the serious state. When you're in a playful state, it is more of an enjoyment of the process. You're feeling static, you're feeling joyful, and you feel an enjoyment, and there's no real idea of a goal in mind. You're simply doing things for the sake of doing them. And that's why the main value underneath the playful side is enjoyment. On the serious side, the main goal is achievement, or the value, achievement. And when you're in a more serious state, you're going to feel more goal-oriented, you're going to feel a need to reach an end, and you're going to have something in mind that you want to reach. So when you're in a more serious state, you're basically more goal-oriented. The next domain that we have is rules. When talking about rules, this is the domain that we generally use to function in a society. We have rules set up in order to reach certain ends. When you go to work for a certain company, they're going to have rules about workplace etiquette. When you're in school, there's rules about social norms and asking questions and so on. And there's 2 sides of this as well. We have the rebellious side. This is related to a value of freedom. When a person is feeling more rebellious, they want to experience more freedom. They basically feel stifled by those rules, and they feel a need to act out of those and rebel, basically. On the other side, we have conforming. The idea or the value behind conforming is fitting in. When someone wants to fit in, when they feel like they need to fit into a group, they're going to conform more and try to fit into that group. So you see that happen in their every interaction. Speaking of interaction, that is the next domain. Now with interaction, basically what this is the driving factor behind how we interact with other people. And with this, there are also 2 sides. On this side, we have sympathy. When you're feeling more sympathetic, you're going to go out of your way to be more caring, more understanding of others, and you're going to try your best to sympathize with others and empathize with them. That is why the value behind that is caring. When someone is in this state, they're going to feel more caring, and they're going to want to go out of their way to help other people more. On the other side, we have mastery. This is driven by a value of control or power. Basically what this means is when someone wants to experience mastery, or they are in the mastery state, they feel a need to be more empowered, to put in more work, and to exert more of their own willpower over the world. When you see people in these states, they are less sympathetic towards others and more controlling and domineering. The 4th domain that we have here is orientation. Now this is semi-related to interaction, but it is more on an individual level. This is basically how you perceive yourself as oriented with the world. And once again, there are 2 sides to orientation. There's the other orientation. driven by a value of collectivism. When you're within this orientation, you will feel more resonance with the collective as a whole. You're going to feel more part of a group. You're not going to think as much about yourself so much as the group that you're with. On the other side, we have self-orientation. This is driven by a value of individualism, and basically what we see here is that someone in this state will want to work more towards themselves, and they will be more goal-oriented towards their own goals and not think about as much as others. So, what is the use of this? Well, as I said, this topic has been used widely in things such as coaching, self-help, leadership goals, and what it is at its basis is an understanding for human motivation. Now, it seems kind of obvious to say that people have different motivations, and we need to work with those motivations in order to reach a desired goal. But what this does is simplify it into specific categories of what people generally feel. And what we have found is that people use these domains. These domains are the basis for their motivation. Basically, they are the very core of what people want and what they're willing to work towards. And what we see with cognitively healthy people is that they will switch between these different states. They are all opposing states, but they are all experienced with different situations on a daily basis. Now, it's called reversal theory because when you're in one state, you can reverse into another state. This can be based off of something that happens, it can be based off certain cues that you see, and you can go from either serious to playful, rebellious to informing, and so on. For an example, when you see a baby crying, there are two ways that you can interact with that. This fits mostly within the interaction domain. You're either going to feel sympathetic, you're going to want to help that crying baby, or you could feel more of a sense of mastery, and that baby could seem to you more of an annoyance than anything else. What this does is categorize the ways that we interact with things and the way that we interact with our opposing values. With every single thing that we experience in our life, there are basically two different ways that we can view that. And the idea here is that it is all based off of the way that we are viewing the world in any present moment. And we can continually switch between these two different world views between every single domain and use that to change the way that we interact with the world. So how is this useful? What can we use this for in communication? The idea here is to understand what is motivating people, to understand what state people might be in, and then to use that to interact with them in the best way possible. For instance, if someone is in a very serious state, when they're feeling very goal-oriented, you wouldn't want to present them with many playful suggestions because they would simply reject you. You wouldn't want to go up to someone that was doing a research project and try to get them to go out for drinks because they wouldn't. They were in that mindset. But the idea with reversal theory is there are certain things you can do to cause those reversals. This is most commonly used in advertising and things like sports coaching. Speaking of advertising, it is developed greatly with the digital age. When you are browsing the internet, for instance, what is happening is your browser is keeping track of all of the websites that you visit, and the advertisements that you are shown are based off of whatever information you are searching for. So to bring it back to the research example, if someone was doing a project for research, they would be shown ads that are more geared toward that serious goal-oriented topic. You might see things about self-improvement or different products that might improve your life. You would take advantage of that state that someone is experiencing to fuel it and to sell them a product based on whatever they're feeling. Now, this goes beyond this. Generally, when you're interacting with people, there are ways that you can use the state that you can see them within to reach a desired goal by communicating with them. For instance, if you were at a workplace and you wanted to put in place a new rule, there are two ways that different people could feel about this. They could either be rebellious or conforming. Now, if they were feeling more conforming, it would be much easier to present them. You could tell them that this is a rule and they needed to follow it. And because they're in that conforming state of mind, they would be much more likely to simply follow the rule. But if they were feeling more rebellious, if they were holding on to that value of freedom, they wouldn't want to follow that rule. So it would require of you to take more effort into describing to them why that rule was important, describing why it is in place, and really making clear to them why this is a necessary rule, And it could even go as far as shifting them into that conforming state and taking them out of that rebellious state. Now, this is a very dense topic, and this is only the very surface of it. Like I had said earlier, there has been a lot of research done, and it has been applied through many different fields, and it is only growing. But as far as communication, this is very useful because it helps you to understand what is motivating people and what you can do to work with them based on whatever state they're experiencing when you're trying to work with them. What kind of flaws do we see with this? Well, it's not perfect. I don't think any psychological categorization of humankind is. There are going to be times when people aren't predictable. There can be times when people can switch out of these states, and it's not as if you can use this to categorize every single person you see. And with some people, they can even stick more to one trait than another, and you'll find it much harder to switch their state of mind. So it's not perfectly applicable. It takes a real effort to try and understand what is motivating people, to talk to them, to understand them, and then use that to go about interacting with them. But I believe that's what the basis of communication is. The goal is to reach an understanding, to know why people want things, and then do your best to understand what they want, and then use that to help them along their way, and perhaps sell them something along the way.